If Viking waterproofing truly didn't work, the evidence would have vanished centuries ago. Instead, we still find longhouses, ships, roof beams, and harbour structures that survived relentless rain, salt spray, snowmelt, and rot in some of the harshest climates on Earth. These were not lucky accidents. Vikings built in places where water was constant and unforgiving, yet their structures resisted it without plastic membranes, chemical sealants, or factory coatings. What they used instead confuses modern builders because it doesn't rely on sealing water out completely. It relies on managing water, so it stops being destructive. That difference is everything. Why Vikings didn't try to make things waterproof in the modern sense. Modern construction aims for absolute exclusion. Water is treated as an enemy to be locked out at all costs. Vikings knew that approach fails the moment materials move, crack, or age. Wood swells, shrinks, and breathes. Stone shifts. Earth settles. Trying to freeze materials in place guarantees failure over time. Instead, Vikings designed buildings that accepted moisture but controlled how it behaved. Water was allowed to enter, slowly drain predictably, and evaporate safely. This mindset explains why their methods still outperform modern systems that fail catastrophically once breached. How pine tar became the backbone of Viking waterproofing. Pine tar was not paint. It was a penetrating preservative. Produced by slowly heating pine roots and resin-rich wood in low oxygen, tar soaked deep into timber fibres. It displaced moisture, discouraged fungi and insects, and remained flexible for decades. Unlike modern sealants that form a brittle surface layer, tar moved with the wood. When planks expanded or contracted, the tar flexed instead of cracking. That flexibility is why Viking ships survived constant wave impact without leaking apart. Why overlapping construction mattered more than any coating. Viking builders relied heavily on overlap rather than seals. Roof boards, wall planks and ship hulls were layered so water shed naturally downward. Gravity did the work. Even if water passed the first layer, it rarely reached the structure beneath. This approach reduced dependence on perfect materials. A single failure point didn't doom the entire system. Modern buildings often fail because everything depends on thin membranes remaining flawless. How sod roofs worked as living waterproof systems. The sod roof is one of the most misunderstood Viking innovations. Layers of birch bark were laid over roof boards, followed by thick turf. Birch bark contains natural oils that repel water while remaining breathable. The turf above acted as insulation and weight, holding everything in place. Rain soaked into the grass layer, slowed and, evaporated gradually. Water rarely reached the bark in force. Snow acted as insulation instead of a threat. The roof became part of the landscape, not a barrier fighting it. Why Viking wool played a role modern builders overlook. Wool wasn't just clothing. Tarred wool was used in ship seams, wall gaps and joints. Wool fibres swell when wet, tightening the seal instead of loosening it. Combined with tar, this created joints that, sealed themselves under pressure. Modern sealants shrink and crack. Viking seams improved when stressed. So, airflow was absolutely essential to keeping these ancient structures dry. You see, Viking buildings actually breathed. The gaps in their construction were, well, intentional. Airflow allowed moisture to escape rather than accumulating inside the walls. This clever approach prevented rot far more effectively than sealed cavities, which tend to trap condensation. In the Viking world, drying mattered more than blocking. A structure that dries survives, plain and simple. But one that traps moisture, well, it just rots away silently. These days, modern builders often struggle to, replicate those results. Modern materials tend to prioritize speed and standardization over deep understanding. Viking waterproofing required, well, knowing your materials intimately and accepting that maintenance was simply part of a building's longevity. Tar needed reapplication, sod roofs needed care. But you see, these systems aged gracefully, not failing all at once, but enduring with a bit of attention. Modern systems often hide failure until the damage is, well, already quite severe. Viking systems, on the other hand, showed wear early and were easy to repair. So, how can these principles still be applied today? For anyone restoring historic buildings, building cabins, or even just thinking about long-term survival, the lessons are clear. Use penetrating treatments instead of surface skins. Favour overlap over perfect seals. Allow structures to breathe. And always design drainage before decoration. Pine tar is still available, And, well, birch bark substitutes exist too. Honestly, when you pair breathable materials with thoughtful construction, they tend to outperform high-tech membranes, especially when you consider maintenance and the reality of failure. So, what does this forgotten knowledge really tell us? Viking waterproofing wasn't magic. Actually, it was humility. Builders accepted that nature always wins, so they stopped trying to overpower it. Instead, they worked with water, not against it. That kind of mindset, well, it built ships that crossed oceans and homes that endured centuries of rain. If this deep dive into Viking construction and survival engineering added value to your understanding of historical resilience, do consider subscribing to the channel for more research-driven content like this. Share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, builders, and preparedness-minded viewers. After all, some of the smartest solutions were already solved long ago.